you want to know how interconnected the global economy is? It's crazy. Legendary economist John Maynard Keynes once said that successful investing is anticipating the anticipation of others. If that doesn't make sense straight away, take a minute and let that sink in. So after 20 days of trading sideways, Bitcoin sprung to life yesterday. And the reason why? Chinese cities are starting to ease COVID restrictions after months of painful lockdowns. Authorities also announced some stimulus measures to support the economy as months of lockdown are having a big impact on the economy. That gave Asian equities a bounce, as it suggests that in the near to mid-term, supply chains will start to unclog. And even though yesterday U.S. markets were closed for Memorial Day, Bitcoin anticipated the invite on behalf of the S&P and sprung into life. But how can we tell if this was just a nice bounce or if there's more to it? Well, certainly unclogging the global supply chains helps the fight against inflation. But even if inflation was tamed, interest rates are too low and the Fed's balance sheet too high. So we'd be driving down the same highway, but in a different lane with a different radio station on. And when we look at why the lockdowns even took place, it raises new questions. The rest of the world seems to have put COVID in the past, but in China, authorities have been pursuing a zero COVID strategy. It's basically impossible to get a clear picture of what's going on in China, so we won't assume anything, but instead share two ideas. The first is that because the government enforced a zero COVID strategy the first time around, its credibility is tied into that response. If this time around it took a Swedish approach, people might start questioning the government's judgment. The second theory is that the Chinese economy is in a much worse state than people realize, and lockdowns were a form of demand destruction and distraction. We all remember the Evergrande collapse. And since then, the Chinese property market slump has turned into a rout. And while the financial world is focused on the US's heavy spending during COVID, China printed a colossal amount, amounting to a third of its economy each year since 2020. In fact, Chinese stimulus spending was over 3 times higher than in the US. But unlike the dollar, the yuan doesn't have reserve status to offset it with. Officially, Chinese inflation is 2%. Unofficially, it is probably as high, if not higher, than in the US, especially when we factor in the situation with Ukraine and the technical obstacles associated with importing Russian oil. So is this the Bitcoin bottom? Probably not. Nothing seems to have fundamentally changed, and we'd love to be wrong. We've said that before, that we might see a relief rally in June, but this would probably only be a temporary move. And returning to the wisdom of John Maynard Keynes, when the facts change, we change our mind. What do you do, sir?